What if I told you that the single most important survival mechanism our species possesses isn't our opposable thumbs, our complex language, or even our ability to make tools? What if the difference between humanity, thriving for another million years, or going extinct within the next century, comes down to something so simple, so fundamental, that we've almost forgotten it exists? Tonight, as you scroll through your phone while the universe spins around you at incredible speeds, as artificial intelligence reshapes civilization faster than we can comprehend it, as climate systems shift beyond historical precedent, there's one quality that Carl Sagan identified as absolutely essential for human survival. A quality that's being systematically eroded from our culture, our schools, and our daily lives. That quality is wonder. Picture this. 1977, Pasadena, California. The Voyager spacecraft have just been launched toward the outer planets, carrying with them a golden record containing the sounds and images of Earth. But Carl Sagan isn't celebrating the engineering triumph. He's worried. He's watching as budget committees question the value of pure science, as educators reduce astronomy classes to memorized facts, as children spend more time consuming entertainment than creating questions. He sees a dangerous trend emerging, a civilization that benefits from wonder while systematically destroying the conditions that produce it. In his journal that year, he writes, "A species that loses its capacity for wonder becomes a species at risk of losing everything else that makes survival meaningful or even possible." This wasn't the romantic musing of a starry-eyed scientist. This was a survival warning from a man who understood something that most of his contemporaries missed. Wonder isn't a luxury emotion that we can afford during peaceful times and abandon during crises. Wonder is the evolutionary adaptation that allowed our ancestors to survive ice ages, volcanic catastrophes, and mass extinctions. Wonder is what drove them to ask, "What's beyond that mountain?" when staying put would have been safer. Wonder is what made them experiment with fire when getting burned was always a risk. Wonder is what motivated them to study the movements of stars when they could have spent that time gathering more food or building stronger shelters. Every major survival breakthrough in human history, agriculture, medicine, navigation, communication, energy production, began with someone experiencing wonder. Not just curiosity, not just interest, but that deeper quality that Carl Sagan described as the birthplace of all science and all art. Wonder is what happens when your mind encounters something so magnificent, so mysterious, so far beyond your current understanding that it temporarily stops all your habitual thinking and opens you to possibilities you hadn't previously imagined. It's the moment when a child looks up at the night sky and asks, "How many stars are there?" It's the instant when an adult realizes that the light entering their eyes left distant suns years ago. It's the recognition that we are part of something so vast and intricate that comprehending it becomes a lifetime adventure rather than a one-time achievement. But here's what makes this survival mechanism so fragile and so crucial. Wonder can be taught, but it can also be destroyed. It can be cultivated through education, but it can also be suffocated by systems that prioritize memorization over questioning, compliance over creativity, comfort over confronting the unknown. When Sagan looked at educational trends in the 1970s and 1980s, he saw wonder being systematically eliminated in favor of what educators called practical skills. Students were being taught what to think rather than how to think. They were being given answers to questions they had never been encouraged to ask. They were being prepared for jobs in a rapidly changing economy by memorizing information that would be obsolete before they graduated. The result, Sagan predicted, would be a generation of people who were technically literate, but wonder illiterate. They would know how to operate complex technologies without understanding the principles that made those technologies possible. They would be able to access vast amounts of information without developing the intellectual discipline necessary to distinguish reliable information from unreliable information. Most dangerously, they would lose the emotional connection to learning that makes people want to understand their world, rather than just navigate through it successfully enough to survive until tomorrow. This prediction proved devastatingly accurate. We now live in the exact world Sagan warned about, a civilization that depends entirely on scientific thinking, while producing citizens who are increasingly incapable of scientific thinking. We carry devices more powerful than the computers that sent humans to the moon, but most of us couldn't explain how they work if our lives depended on it. We live in an era when we can sequence genomes, detect gravitational waves, and photograph black holes, but public support for the funding that makes these achievements possible is constantly under attack. We have access to more information than any humans in history, but we're simultaneously experiencing what researchers call an epistemic crisis, a breakdown in our collective ability to distinguish truth from falsehood, expertise from opinion, evidence from wishful thinking. The symptoms of wonder deficiency are everywhere around us. We see them in the rising rates of anxiety and depression among young people who have access to more entertainment than any generation in history, but report feeling bored and disconnected from life. We see them in the political polarization that treats complex problems as if they have simple solutions and treats disagreement as evidence of moral failing rather than opportunities for collaborative problem-solving. We see them in the environmental destruction that continues despite overwhelming scientific evidence about its long-term consequences, because people who have lost their sense of wonder about natural systems find it easy to treat those systems as disposable resources rather than irreplaceable marvels. But most ominously, we see wonder deficiency in our collective response to the existential challenges that require exactly the kind of creative, collaborative, long-term thinking that only emerges from minds that have maintained their capacity for wonder. Climate change, artificial intelligence alignment, pandemic prevention, nuclear weapons proliferation, space exploration, genetic engineering, every issue that will determine whether our species thrives or merely survives in the coming century requires the intellectual courage to confront unprecedented problems with unprecedented solutions. And that courage emerges only from wonder, the recognition that reality is far more complex, far more beautiful, and far more surprising than our current understanding can encompass. The most shocking aspect of wonder as a survival mechanism isn't just that it helps us adapt to new challenges, it's that wonder actively protects us from the kind of intellectual rigidity that has destroyed every previous civilization that achieved technological sophistication but lost its capacity for growth. Carl Sagan studied this pattern obsessively, examining how societies throughout history had developed impressive capabilities only to collapse when they stopped questioning their own assumptions, stopped exploring beyond their borders, stopped wondering whether there might be better ways to organize their knowledge and their communities. Consider the classical example that haunted Sagan's imagination, the Library of Alexandria. For centuries, it represented humanity's greatest achievement in preserving and expanding knowledge. Scholars traveled from across the known world to study mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. The library's collection represented the accumulated wonder of human civilization. Every scroll was there because someone had experienced the kind of profound curiosity that made them willing to spend years investigating questions that had no guaranteed practical applications. But the library didn't fall to barbarian invasion or natural disaster. It declined gradually as the culture that had created it lost its appreciation for open-ended inquiry, its tolerance for ideas that challenged established beliefs, its willingness to fund research that might not produce immediate economic benefits. The same pattern appears in every civilization that has achieved significant technological development. Wonder drives the initial breakthrough, wonder sustains the period of rapid growth, and the loss of wonder precipitates the decline. When societies become comfortable with their current level of understanding, when they begin treating their accumulated knowledge as complete rather than provisional, when they start punishing questions that threaten established authorities, they stop growing. And in a universe where challenges are constantly evolving, anything that stops growing begins dying. This is why Sagan was so adamant that wonder isn't just individually beneficial, it's collectively essential. A society full of people who have maintained their capacity for wonder is a society that can adapt to changing circumstances, develop new technologies when old ones become inadequate, and revise their understanding when new evidence becomes available. A society where wonder has been systematically suppressed is a society that becomes increasingly brittle, increasingly unable to respond effectively to novel challenges, increasingly likely to collapse when the assumptions underlying their current systems prove inadequate to address emerging realities. The mechanism by which wonder protects civilizations is straightforward but profound. Wonder generates the questions that produce the knowledge that enables the adaptations that allow survival in changing environments. When our ancestors wondered what caused diseases, they developed medicine. When they wondered what lay beyond the horizon, they developed navigation and exploration. When they wondered how to communicate across vast distances, they developed writing, printing, and eventually electronic communication. When they wondered what the stars were made of, they developed spectroscopy and discovered that we're made of the same elements, a realization that revolutionized both astronomy and biology. Every technology you depend on, every medical treatment that has saved your life or the lives of people you love, every system of knowledge that helps you navigate complexity, all of it traces back to someone experiencing wonder, profound enough to motivate years or decades of investigation into questions that had no guaranteed answers. Wonder isn't just the beginning of the scientific process, it's the fuel that sustains scientific thinking through all the frustrations, failures, and dead ends that characterize real research. Without wonder, we have information. With wonder, we have understanding. And only understanding provides the foundation for wisdom. But here's where Sagan's analysis becomes truly revolutionary. Wonder doesn't just help us develop new capabilities, it helps us develop the right capabilities. When we approach problems with genuine wonder, rather than just technical interest, we're more likely to ask questions that lead to solutions that enhance life, rather than merely solving immediate problems while creating new, more dangerous problems. Wonder makes us curious about side effects, long-term consequences, and systemic impacts. Wonder makes us ask not just can we do this, but should we do this? And what will happen to everything else if we do this? The absence of wonder, by contrast, produces what Sagan called technological barbarism, the development of impressive capabilities without the wisdom to use them responsibly. We see this in the nuclear weapons that were developed by people who understood nuclear physics, but hadn't wondered deeply enough about the implications of giving humans the power to destroy their own civilization. We see it in the social media algorithms that were designed by people who understood how to capture human attention, but hadn't wondered about what would happen to democratic discourse if attention capture became the primary goal of information systems. We see it in the industrial processes that were developed by people who understood chemistry and engineering, but hadn't wondered about what would happen to planetary life support systems if those processes were scaled up globally. Wonder prevents technological barbarism by maintaining our connection to the larger context in which all human activities take place. When we approach problems from a place of wonder, we automatically consider not just immediate solutions, but ultimate consequences. We ask not just, how does this work, but how does this affect everything else? We develop not just technical competence, but what Sagan called cosmic perspective, the ability to see our actions in the context of geological time, evolutionary history, and our responsibilities to future generations. If you felt something shifting in your understanding, as we've explored how wonder functions as humanity's primary survival mechanism, if you've recognized that the capacity for profound curiosity might be more important than any specific piece of knowledge you've acquired, then you've experienced the beginning of what Sagan called cosmic consciousness. This isn't just another YouTube channel about space or science. This is a community dedicated to cultivating the kind of wonder that could literally save our species from the intellectual stagnation that has destroyed every previous technological civilization. Subscribe not just to get notifications about new videos, but to join others who understand that maintaining our capacity for wonder isn't just personally enriching, it's collectively essential for human survival. Tell me in the comments, what's something that still fills you with wonder? When was the last time you experienced the kind of profound curiosity that made you want to spend hours or days investigating a question just for the joy of understanding? Your wonder might be exactly what another viewer needs to reconnect with their own capacity for the kind of questioning that keeps civilizations alive. The most terrifying aspect of our current historical moment isn't any specific crisis we face. It's how systematically we've dismantled the educational, cultural, and social institutions that traditionally cultivated wonder in each new generation. Carl Sagan understood that wonder isn't an automatic human trait that appears naturally in every child and persists throughout life, regardless of circumstances. Wonder is a delicate capacity that requires careful nurturing intentional protection, and continuous reinforcement if it's going to survive the pressures that push us toward conformity, passivity, and intellectual comfort. When societies stop producing wonder, they stop producing the kind of minds that can navigate unprecedented challenges. And unprecedented challenges, as Sagan noted, are exactly what define every moment in cosmic history. Consider what has happened to childhood in the decades since Sagan issued his warnings about the decline of wonder. Children who once spent hours exploring their natural environments, constructing elaborate imaginary worlds, and asking endless questions about how things work, now spend those same hours consuming pre-packaged entertainment designed to capture attention without stimulating genuine curiosity. Educational systems that once encouraged open-ended exploration now focus primarily on preparing students for standardized tests that measure their ability to select correct answers from predetermined options rather than their capacity to generate interesting questions about subjects that matter to them personally. The result is what researchers call learned helplessness on a civilizational scale. People become accustomed to having their entertainment provided, their information pre-digested, their choices limited to options that someone else has determined are acceptable. They lose confidence in their ability to investigate complex questions independently. They lose interest in subjects that don't promise immediate practical benefits. Most dangerously, they lose the emotional connection to learning that makes intellectual growth feel like an adventure rather than a chore. But the assault on wonder goes deeper than changes in education and entertainment. It extends to the fundamental assumptions that govern how we organize economic systems, political institutions, and social relationships. When societies prioritize efficiency over exploration, when they reward conformity more than creativity, when they treat questions as signs of disloyalty rather than expressions of engagement, they systematically select against the personality traits that produce wonder and in favor of the personality traits that produce compliance. The people who succeed in such systems are those who excel at following instructions, not those who excel at questioning assumptions. The ideas that get funded are those that promise quick returns on investment, not those that might revolutionize our understanding of ourselves and our possibilities. Sagan called this process the domestication of wonder, the transformation of human curiosity from a wild, unpredictable force that drives exploration and discovery into a tame, manageable resource that can be directed toward predetermined goals. Domesticated wonder produces technological improvements within existing paradigms. Wild wonder produces paradigm shifts that create entirely new possibilities. Domesticated wonder helps us build better versions of technologies we already understand. Wild wonder helps us discover technologies we hadn't previously imagined. Domesticated wonder is useful for solving problems that we've already identified. Wild wonder is essential for recognizing problems that we haven't yet learned to see. The difference between these two kinds of wonder is the difference between civilizational maintenance and civilizational transformation. Societies that retain only domesticated wonder can continue functioning as long as their environment remains stable and their current approaches remain adequate to address the challenges they face. But when circumstances change, when climate patterns shift, when technologies develop capabilities that exceed our wisdom to control them, when political systems prove inadequate to coordinate responses to global challenges, only wild wonder provides the intellectual flexibility necessary to develop genuinely new approaches rather than just intensified versions of old approaches. This is why Sagan was so concerned about what he observed in universities during the 1980s and 1990s. Students were becoming more technically competent, but less intellectually adventurous. They were learning to solve problems that professors assigned, but losing interest in identifying problems that nobody had assigned. They were developing expertise in narrow specializations, but losing the capacity for the kind of interdisciplinary thinking that produces breakthrough insights. Most ominously, they were becoming comfortable with not understanding the broader implications of their work, as long as their immediate assignments were completed successfully. The consequences of this trend are visible throughout contemporary civilization. We have climate scientists who can model atmospheric systems with incredible precision, but struggle to communicate the implications of their findings to the general public. We have technologists who can design artificial intelligence systems with remarkable capabilities, but seem genuinely surprised when those systems produce outcomes that threaten democratic institutions. We have economists who can analyze market mechanisms in sophisticated detail, but appear unable to account for the environmental costs of treating infinite growth as a sustainable goal on a finite planet. In each case, technical competence has been developed without the broader wonder that would help people understand how their work fits into the larger human story. The tragedy is that this narrowing of wonder isn't necessary or inevitable. It's the result of specific choices about how to organize education, how to fund research, how to structure career incentives, and how to define success. These choices can be changed, but only by people who understand why wonder matters for more than just individual fulfillment. Wonder is what allows societies to see beyond their current limitations. Wonder is what generates the questions that produce the innovations that enable survival in changing environments. Wonder is what maintains the intellectual flexibility that prevents civilizations from becoming so rigid that they shatter when faced with challenges they hadn't anticipated. But perhaps most importantly, wonder is what keeps human life meaningful enough that people want to preserve it and extend it and share it with future generations. When people lose their capacity for wonder, they lose their emotional connection to the cosmic story of which they are part. They begin treating existence as a problem to be endured rather than an adventure to be explored. They start making decisions based on fear rather than curiosity, control rather than discovery, short-term survival rather than long-term flourishing. And a species that has lost its sense of wonder about its own existence is a species that has lost its primary motivation for ensuring that existence continues. As we reach the culmination of our exploration into why wonder is essential for human survival, we arrive at the most hopeful realization of all. We are living at the exact moment when rediscovering wonder isn't just personally enriching. It's the key to unlocking human potential on a scale that Carl Sagan could barely imagine. The same technologies that threaten to diminish our capacity for wonder also provide us with unprecedented tools for experiencing wonder at cosmic scales. The same global communication networks that can spread misinformation can also connect curious minds across every barrier that has historically limited collaborative investigation. The same artificial intelligence systems that might replace human thinking can also amplify human wondering in ways that could accelerate discovery and creativity beyond anything our species has previously achieved. Carl Sagan's vision of wonder as a survival mechanism was prophetic, but it was also optimistic. He believed that humans are fundamentally curious beings who lose their capacity for wonder only when that capacity is systematically suppressed by institutions and cultures that have forgotten why wonder matters. When people are given permission to question, resources to investigate, and communities that celebrate discovery rather than merely rewarding conformity, they naturally return to the kind of open-ended exploration that has driven every major breakthrough in human understanding. The challenge isn't to create wonder where none exists. The challenge is to remove the barriers that prevent naturally occurring wonder from flourishing. This perspective transforms how we think about every institution in our society. Educational systems become wonder cultivation environments rather than information delivery systems. Scientific research becomes collaborative adventure rather than competitive credentialism. Technological development becomes conscious evolution rather than blind optimization. Political systems become cooperative problem-solving rather than tribal warfare. Economic systems become resource sharing for continued exploration rather than resource hoarding for temporary security. Every aspect of human civilization, when organized around the principle of maintaining and extending wonder, becomes aligned with our deepest nature as curious beings rather than fighting against it. The practical steps for implementing this transformation are emerging throughout contemporary culture, often in unexpected places. We see it in the citizen science projects that allow people to contribute to genuine research while experiencing the joy of discovery. We see it in the online educational platforms that prioritize understanding over testing, exploration over completion, questions over answers. We see it in the space programs that recognize that inspiring wonder about cosmic possibilities is at least as important as developing specific technologies. We see it in the environmental movements that help people fall in love with natural systems rather than just feel guilty about destroying them. We see it in the scientific communication efforts that focus on sharing the experience of discovery rather than just communicating the results of research. Most importantly, we see it in the communities of people who have recognized that wonder is contagious, collaborative, and cumulative. When people who have maintained their capacity for wonder connect with each other, they create environments where questioning becomes celebration, where investigation becomes play, where learning becomes adventure. These communities become demonstration projects for what human civilization could look like if it were organized around the principle of supporting rather than suppressing our natural curiosity about ourselves and our place in the cosmos. The long-term implications of this transformation extend far beyond solving our current challenges. When wonder becomes the organizing principle of human civilization, we don't just develop better technologies or more sustainable economic systems or more effective political institutions. Though we develop all of those things, we also become the kind of species that deserves to inherit the universe. We become worthy of the cosmic inheritance that 4 billion years of evolution has given us, the capacity to understand our origins, choose our future, and create meaning through the very act of conscious exploration. This is what Sagan meant when he wrote that we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. Not just individual humans thinking individual thoughts, but human civilization as a collective wondering mechanism through which the universe explores its own possibilities. When we approach problems from this perspective, we're not just solving human problems. We're participating in cosmic evolution. We're helping the universe become more conscious of itself, more creative in its expressions, more capable of supporting complexity and beauty and meaning across vast scales of space and time. The evidence that this transformation is possible isn't just theoretical, it's biographical. Every person who has ever maintained their sense of wonder into adulthood, every researcher who has spent their career investigating questions that fascinated them regardless of career consequences, every teacher who has prioritized inspiring curiosity over delivering content, every parent who has encouraged their children to ask questions rather than just memorize answers, all of these people are proof that wonder can survive and flourish even in environments that don't actively support it. When we create environments that do actively support it, wonder becomes the foundation for the kind of civilization that could explore galaxies, communicate with other conscious species, and create works of beauty that would be worthy of a universe that has spent billions of years evolving the capacity for wonder itself. The choice before us is simple but profound. We can continue treating wonder as a luxury that we can afford to ignore during crises, or we can recognize it as the survival mechanism that enables us to navigate crises successfully and emerge from them stronger, wiser, and more capable than we were before. We can continue organizing our institutions around the assumption that humans are primarily competitive, fearful, and short-sighted, or we can begin organizing them around the recognition that humans are naturally curious, collaborative, and capable of thinking across vast scales when their wonder is supported rather than suppressed. If this vision of wonder as humanity's pathway to cosmic citizenship has awakened something deep in your understanding of what it means to be alive in the 21st century, if you feel called to be part of the generation that proves Carl Sagan right about our species' capacity for continued growth and exploration, then you've found more than educational entertainment here. You've found your cosmic calling. This community exists for people who understand that wonder isn't just a pleasant emotion, but the evolutionary adaptation that could carry our species from a single planet to the stars themselves. Subscribe not just to stay connected to this exploration, but to connect with others who are committed to ensuring that wonder never disappears from human civilization. Share in the comments what continues to fill you with wonder, how you cultivate curiosity in your daily life, what questions you'd love to see our species investigate in the coming decades. Together, we can ensure that Carl Sagan's greatest prediction comes true, that wonder will not only help us survive, but help us become worthy of the extraordinary cosmic inheritance that has made our existence possible in the first place.